Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next live stream. I'll be your producer for this session. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speakers for today.
Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's evening here over in the UK. My name is Amy Boyd and I'm going to be your host of Model Mondays today. This is the first episode, so the models are back. We've got loads of different things coming up in this series, but the first thing for us to talk about this Model Mondays is actually going to be our MAI models. So we're going to do a whole spotlight in this session, and that is why the wonderful Sophie and Yanan are both joining me here today. We are going to jump straight in because we've got a lot to cover in a short space of time, but we're really excited to see you all. Please keep putting comments in the chat. We can potentially bring them into the show, try and get some of them answered. But we've also got a couple of experts in the chat who will be able to answer some of your questions as well. Wonderful. Alrighty. So from here, what I'll do, let me just double check. No. Oh, are we still getting the echo? Okay. Wonderful. So with that, let's go into straight into Sophie's session. So Sophie, first things first, welcome to Model Mondays. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Microsoft?
Hi, Amy. Nice to meet you, and nice to see there's so many people calling in from all over the world, including Mars. So that's exciting. Yeah, my name's Sophie. I'm in the Microsoft AI team. So inside of Microsoft, you may have heard we now have a model building frontier lab team. I work on the product team inside of that group, and happy to kind of dive in to some of our philosophy and work that we're doing in that group.
Wonderful. Yanan, we'll come back to you shortly and hear a little bit more, but we'll dig into what Sophie was talking about. So, Sophie, what's the ethos at MAI, at Microsoft AI?
So I think as we think about sort of how MAI is building models, it's also good to think about sort of what's happening to the industry at large. And I think there is definitely a vibe that is shifting from sort of token maxing and how can I burn as many tokens to how can I actually get to token efficiency, where I can deploy models that are sustainable for products that I'm building, that are sustainable for the business. I think it's very exciting to see these massive frontier models, but I think the reality is we do need to think about how can we build AI solutions on top of models that are really working for the right task, the right job, in a way that you're not just kind of burning your token budget.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know actually Nitya, who creates this wonderful live stream for us, always says like, it's almost like, why are you using a Ferrari for a job that, doesn't necessarily need it, right? And I think all developers, we like the new shiny. I'm one for the new shiny as well in some senses, but it's always very exciting to be able to actually say, well, can a flash model, a smaller model, or can a certain moment be right for a pro model? So that's really exciting to hear that is kind of that focus area. But there's a whole lot behind even just that high level ethos, right? So tell us a little bit more about some of the distinct features.
Yeah, so I think one of the things, and we talked about this for our thinking model at Build, but that we really are building from scratch. So our thinking model is not distilled from another model. We have built that entirely from scratch. And I think what's really interesting about that is we have full traceability of the training pipeline. So we know what the data was that we trained the model on. We're sort of running our experiments, our evals, everything throughout. And I think as our customers are sort of looking to Microsoft for, hey, is this a model that I can trust? Is this a model that I can safely deploy? Like, having that full transparent pipeline is super, super important. I think also, like, ingrained in sort of the DNA of how we think about this goes back to that idea of token efficiency. So throughout sort of training and deployment, how do we think about building models that are super, super efficient? And I think if you can see on the left side of this slide, like, when you're designing and building models in-house and you have access to the entire stack, and Yanan will talk about this with respect to GitHub, but like, when you can be training models in Harness, and when you can understand sort of the agentic coding use cases or the agentic knowledge use cases, you can really work to build a very, very tight custom training and deployment path that then allows you to be super efficient in terms of token spend, which we then want to pass back to our customers, to our users, to our developers. So we as a team are always trying to push on efficiency and then pass those savings back to our developers.
Nice. Yeah, we do know that token efficiency type content in developer relations now is incredibly popular. People are seeking that out. And so if that's kind of built into the way you're thinking about building these models, I think certainly from my point of view, that's a great thing to hear as a developer. I noticed in the chat, just want to address it, a lot of people are talking about, can we do stuff with images? More to come on that, and also with the harness piece as well. With Yanan, she'll dig in a little bit more there. So where are all of these being used, Sophie? Because I think this one was quite an impressive slide when I first saw it.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting to kind of see how these models are coming to market, how they're getting used inside of the products that we ourselves are building. So, I talked about agentic knowledge work. So, we'll see in an upcoming slide how we're training models for Excel. Obviously, we launched our model in GitHub, and you're going to see some of those demos from Yanan. The models are also showing up across the portfolio. So in PowerPoint, in our Dragon medical translation, Copilot, and even in Dynamics 365. So it's really important for us to make sure that we're building models that make our products better. And then we take those models and we're also deploying them on Foundry and in GitHub so that other sort of customers and users can get access to the base model. And then also, of course, access to the product where the model is powering that.
Gosh, yes. So thinking about the two-pronged approach there, in some senses, these models are going into much of Microsoft first-party things that we build. We see that value and that return, but actually also developers can seek that great experience and use it themselves. Yet working a lot with Foundry myself, so it is always nice to be able to see these different models pop up quickly in that huge ecosystem that's there as well. So again, using the right model for the right job, always being kind of key and top of mind for everyone there. So what are the recent ones? I know we talked quite a lot on Microsoft Build. Probably a lot of our viewers here may have watched some of Microsoft Build with Mustafa on stage, but tell us a little bit more about what we see here.
Yeah, so I think, as you were sort of mentioning, right model for the right task. So we have families of models inside of MAI. So, we announced our first thinking model that is our 35B mixture of experts model, designed for sort of reasoning code. We also have MAI Code Flash, which is live in GitHub, which we'll talk about later. We have an amazing family of image models, which, again, I don't want to ruin the surprise because Amy's going to showcase some of those. But what you can see, the theme here is that there are families of models, and then within those families, there's different model sizes for different use cases. And so I think what's really nice for developers is you can kind of look at your task, look at your benchmarks, look at your budget, and really find like what is the right model for you. And the image and audio models are available on Foundry. They're also available on OpenRouter. So it's super easy to be able to use them. We also actually have a playground where you can go and play around and test these models as well. And naturally, they're all in Foundry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we are actually going to show the MAI playground today, but we do have a QR code that will take you there. So do make sure that you check out the slides and scan that QR code. It is a really great experience. It was where I first started using the image models, just to get that kind of comfort, understand what it does, stuff like that, and then naturally move to code after that. So yeah, no, that makes sense for our audience. Sophie, I saw this slide and I was like, hill climbing. Number one, it sounds like a lot of effort, but what is hill climbing? Why is it important to models? And why are we only hearing about it now, I guess, in some senses, as it comes to models?
Yeah, so hill climbing is really this idea that models are always learning and improving. So I think this is a good example to talk about for our Excel model. So I mentioned a couple of slides ago, we trained a model for Excel that's able to perform on par with GPT-5.6 on certain tasks, but it's a much, much smaller model. So we were able to take the MAI Code 1 Flash model that is running in GitHub now, and basically put it through what we call a sort of reinforcement learning environment. So this is where the model kind of learns the particular tasks, understands, what a spreadsheet is, what a formula is, and works through those tasks. And if it does well, it gets a good reward. If it doesn't, it learns that too. And so you're sort of circling through this agentic knowledge work behavior within the Excel environment. And that's what we talk about, sort of being able to climb on those evaluations or those benchmarks, right? Because ultimately, we want to build a model that does really, really well at tasks that matter for Excel, while using the minimum amount of parameters that then obviously maps to the reduced token spend. So it's really like, how do you take a really good model? How do you train that model in an environment or people probably talk about like RL gyms or RL environments, but these are kind of the ways that we allow models to learn these agentic tasks and not just train it on kind of static data, right? So I think to your question, why are we hearing about this now? I think before, there was this sense of let's just sort of take data, very sort of flat static data, train a model. Now we're expecting these models to do tasks, perform skills, call in tools. And so training agentic models to do those types of things really requires these reinforcement learning environments.
Nice. No, interesting to hear about reinforcement learning. I come from a data science background, and so obviously that's always been a part of this discussion. So it's great to hear that that's kind of back. It's obviously always been an incredibly valuable approach to the way of doing different things. But also thinking about our developers, you were saying like, yeah, we don't just expect it to regurgitate information anymore. Like when I was sitting in Excel recently, more for a personal thing of like finances, I was like, I want you to do it. Like, I don't want to do it anymore, sort of thing. Like, I know you can do it. So I'm just going to get lazy. That's what they do with like coaching, isn't it? Be lazy, be present or whatever. The same kind of thing it feels for developers now, in the sense of that will, that's the expectation. Describe what I want it to do, have it sort of do it and take that action. And for those of you who do build on Foundry, that are watching this, again, not something that's new to us. And when we're adding MCP servers, updating our system prompts, adding our knowledge and making sure the evaluations show that the tool calling's coming up at the right time and all of that kind of thing. So it's nice to see all of these different worlds compare, and not only they're being built like this, but they're being used like this as well. So this is the kind of loop that you were sort of calling to the different steps.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, to your point, Amy, of people kind of going into Foundry, I mean, I wanted to sort of show under the hood, here's how we're climbing for products and tasks that matter. But you also probably, for folks who tuned in at Build, saw kind of this idea of frontier tuning, right? We want to be able to make that available for our customers too. So MAI model weights are a great jumping off point, I think, in addition to the sort of post-training or fine-tuning, frontier tuning services in Foundry, to be able to take a model, take your data, figure out the tasks or evals that matter for you, and then really kind of climb through that loop.
No, really, always seeing the loop is always super valuable. Now, I know we're going to head on to a bit of a deep dive into one of these models, which is our coding model first. But Sophie, you wanted to tell us about all the places that this was available, because it isn't just available through Microsoft AI.
Yeah, so I think, you can get the models, learn all about them on Foundry. I mentioned our playground, super easy, MAI playground, you can go ahead and play. And then for folks who want to sort of try and compare models, they're available on Open Router. And I think, as we're sort of building and climbing and learning, any feedback is always super welcome. I think, we really want to engage with the developer audience. We want to meet you guys where you are. So any feedback, any requests, anything, I think we're very open and listening to making this a sort of collaborative journey as we bring these models to market.
Oh, nice. That's wonderful to hear. We do have a Microsoft Foundry Discord server that has quite a strong developer presence in there with people who are building. So we'll make sure to put that ask out there for any feedback about any of our MAI models, and obviously pass it on to your team as well. So Sophie, thank you so much for talking to us about the high-level approaches, what you're trying to achieve as a group, and for joining us here on Model Mondays. But Yanan, we'll come to you next on... First of all, we haven't introduced you. Introduce yourself. Who are you and what do you do at Microsoft?
Hi, everyone. I'm Yana. I'm the PM at Microsoft AI. I'm the PM mainly working on coding models. And today I'm going to share some good demos as well as how we build the model internally with you. Super excited.
Yes, it's so brilliant to have you here. I have seen these demos. They are great. So we'll get straight onto them. But tell us a little bit, what's been built? Why has it been built? How's it been built?
Yeah, so I think basically you heard just Sophie talking about how we are climbing on product harness as well as training specific models for better user experience in product, like for GitHub Copilot, like for Excel. And for GitHub Copilot, I think our main advantages here is because we are in-house and we share a lot of knowledge as well as collaboration with GitHub Copilot, that make it possible for us to specifically build a model for GitHub Copilot. And when we say this model is built for GitHub Copilot, we mean mainly two things. First thing is for training. In all those reinforcement learnings, we just directly use GitHub Product Harness in training. So even during training, the model get intact to the tools that are available in production in VS Code as well as in Copilot CLI, and learn how to interact with this code to be best token efficient as well as achieve the best quality. And for evaluation, we do mainly two parts. One is we evaluate all the public and internal benchmarks using those product harness directly. Like it's not any public directly benchmark, and we take the code in and we evaluate that, but we put those public and internal benchmarks into product harness itself to mimic the real world use cases, and then evaluate the model quality. And we also rely heavily on product metrics. So we really treat model as building a product. We build the model, we have early checkpoints, and we share that model checkpoint to run A/B flighting on production. And from there, we monitor all those production metrics on quality, efficiency, and engagement to improve the model quality. So if you go to the next page slides, to give you a little bit of sense of how we are monitoring all those different aspects of the model quality. The most important part is definitely the code that generated by the model needs to be useful. And in the case of this, we measure, for example, how much code get accepted after AI generates those code, and we measure how much code is returned after like 10 minutes or 20 minutes to say whether the user finds those code valuable. And we also measure how much code got survived through a Git commit, and that we see a very strong signal of this code is usable for you. So for all those online metrics, we measure the code quality. And then the second category is token efficiency. Just like Sophie mentioned, we're kind of pivoting from token maxing to token efficiency. And this is the part we care a lot because it's also directly tied to the user cost. So we are trying to say how many tokens that are needed to get the task done, as well as how many turns user need to reach to a commit. And from there, we measure all those metrics very closely so we can offer a model that with great token efficiency to save you cost, but also get the same task done with the quality level. And then the third category, which is engagement. We basically measure things about are users more likely to return and use the model, as well as how many user initialized turns of using that model. By monitoring all those engagement signals, we get a sense of whether users are satisfied with the model quality in general. So again, all those three pillars tell us a good story of when we keep building the model and keep releasing new checkpoint, and those experiment results tell us a lot about whether we are heading to the right direction to users. And if you go to the next slide, I want to give some like internal view of the kind of A/B experiment we've been running since the build launch. So before the build launch, we run multiple A/B experiments to decide the final candidate. And then just 1 week after build, we were able to launch another model checkpoint with incremental update in place without any production interruption. But with that model, we get better token efficiency, we get better engagement, we also get less token cancellation, like error rate. And then there's several ones that didn't beat the current production one. But early July, we were able to get another new model that deployed to production with faster token time between token streaming. So which basically means you get less 25% of the time to complete to get your task done. As well as 2 weeks later, we get another new checkpoint, which reduced the error rate a little bit more and also increased the code survival rate a little bit more. And right now, we're actively running those kind of experiments to prepare our next release, which I guess you'll hear from the news. So just stay tuned. Then with that, and with that, I want to jump to the demos. I have several demos to show you live of the experience using this coding model in GitHub Copilot, starting from the first one, which I'm using the model to build a greenfield web application. In this first demo, what I want to show you is a typical greenfield web application building demo. So here in VS Code, I've selected to use the MAI Code 1 Flash model. And in the prompt, I'm just giving it a very generic prompt of building me a website of a fictional ramen coffee roaster. And the model does understand this intent, and then went ahead and created me the HTML file, CSS file, and JavaScript file in this workspace. And after that, if I open this build app for you, it launches an internal web server locally, and then from that, we can see the build web application. The design is actually, I would say, very elegant. It captured the main meaning of this is a ramen coffee shop. It has like different choices, some cute coffee photos. And at the end of this web app, it also has like pull up a chair in ramen where it shares the location of the coffee shop, the office business hours, as well as a cute map placeholder. And what's more interesting here is if I keep zooming in on the page, it actually supports responsive design greatly here. So if I keep zooming in, it will see all those components are moving around, and keep zooming out, it will like become full width of the screen and showing the website desktop. So the mobile, the website will also work for mobile in this case. Okay, cool. This is like greenfield web application, but in your day-to-day work, you likely work with a brownfield app, which like you have existing code, you want to apply bug fixes and features. In the next 2 demos, we're going to show you some examples of pulling some open code and then adding some new fixes and features to that. And in those next 2 demos, I want to show you not only the greenfield building, but also brownfield application building. In normal cases, when developer working with applications, it's sometimes not just start with a single prompt and build something from scratch. They start with an existing app. So for that, what I did was I picked a highly starred Node application on GitHub, which is called Memos. And here, as you can see in the screenshot, it is basically a local Notes app where you can manage your to-do list and also add a bunch of notes to the system. It's completely stored locally. And if I go back here, this is the original version of that app. I've added several to-dos for today, like the next generation of the model launch, as well as Model Monday live podcast. So, but I realized for this local node type, it actually missing an important feature, which is category. So like as a node person, more oftentimes I want to just categorize the node to be important, urgency, or like it is an idea. Basically, I want to add tags as well as color those nodes, so it's more obvious which part is more urgent. So that's why in this VS Code prompt, I prompt the model to say, okay, in this app, for each node card, can you also add a category to color the context menu? So in that way, I can basically apply different categories to each node. So the model went ahead and like first search the code base, try to understand a little bit about the context. And then after that, it like did a bunch of explorations and makes a plan of the implementation. And then once it knows where to fix the code, it just regularly does like any other model do. It went ahead and apply all those different fixes to that. And then it launches this web UI and for me to check that. But it only adds the text and let me configure the colors, but it doesn't let me configure the default colors. So I prompted further and saying like, hey, for all those color configuration, not only I want to configure and add new ones, but I also want to be able to configure the default colors. So it does the fix decently. And then there's some small fix here and there on the UI of saying after I apply the tags, it's not immediately refresh on the page. I have to click the refresh button to let it take effect. So there are some additional fixes here that you can, as you can see, I prompt the model 2 different times of adding all the things that I want. So the final result here, if I go here and then apply the latest stash, which is basically the model build version, and you can say it adds this category to the context menu button. And then from here, I can say, okay, this is an idea and this is also a little bit urgent, as well as like for this model Monday, it's a bit urgent. You can clear all the categories and you can also configure different colors, add new categories here. And then it also adds this cute filter on the top where I can say I want only to take a look at ideas. I only want to take a look at all the urgent items. So this is a very quick example of a simple to medium complexity task of a day-to-day development of adding features and addressing fixes to some existing brownfield application. Okay, cool. Yeah, next one is a similar one with a brownfield. Let's start rolling. Brownfield app building example. And here I'm taking another open source GitHub repo, which is called VS Code Pets. It builds a VS Code extension and then add some pets to be your coding companion. So if in the repo here, I'm launching the VS Code instance with this VS Code extension, you can see it has like those cute pets walking around, as well as you can add new pets here, and you can change the background to a castle, and you can change the background back to the beach. So it's quite interesting of those pets walking around. And what I did is those pets are walking around, but they don't fly normally. So what I'm thinking is, can I use MAI Code Flash to add a fly feature to those pets? So in my prompt, I'm saying, okay, for this pet extension app, can you add a menu button to let the pets fly around? And when it clicked, it does a quite decent job with just single prompt, have a fly button added, and did a bunch of changes, as well as let the pets fly. But I realized it also has some additional issues of, for example, sometimes the pipes will fly outside of the top edge of the wheel, which I don't like, as well as for the fly button, the default choice is not good. So I asked it to refresh it to a more flyish button. So after I apply all those changes from the model here, if I choose to stash the changes again from the latest one, and then after that, let's relaunch the app with the model generated code. And after the extension load, you can see those paths are here, and then it adds this flying button. So if I click this button, it has this emoji of I'm flying, and then both the fox as well as the chicken can fly now on the screen. This is another example of showing the MAI Code Flash can handle those kind of simple to medium complex tasks of adding features or applying fixes to your existing brownfield applications. And cool. And for the next one, we want to show you something that is upcoming, which is the native image understanding that we're going to add in the next generation of Code 1.1 Flash. And in this last demo, what I'm going to show you is the upcoming feature for MAI Code 1.1 Flash, which now has native support for image understanding as well as reasoning. So in preparation of this model launch, I need to do something about get a chart going for all the academic benchmarks, as well as comparing that with our competitors and compete target models. So what I did is I got this table basically recording all the pass rate as well as solution lengths for sweep bench verified as well as for terminal bench benchmark scores that I need to turn into a chart. And I also got this design mockup from our designers of saying this is a better way of represent the charts as well as different colors and themes that we need to adapt to. So I thought maybe I just give this task to MAI Code 1.1 Flash, which already support native reasoning and understanding for visions. So I attached those two charts in this workspace, and then I gave Code 1.1 Flash a prompt and saying hey, can you help me create a grouped bar chart, just like the style in the design, but with the data in table PNG file. And also each model should basically to be more concrete. I think normally when you work with small models, you want your prompt to be a little bit more concrete than those frontier models that you're prompting. So with this single prompt, it generated this index.html file, which natively has the visual of the code numbers. It mimics all the legend of the models in the design file and mimics the basic style of the design file, as well as if we check the numbers here, this is 7.2.6, this is 8.6K. It also gets all the numbers correct within this one shot. And of course, because there are still some small mismatch between the design file as well as the HTML file, I potentially need additional prompt to say, move this pass rate and solution to the second row, or as well as the border of this chart is a little bit different than the design. So this still needs some additional work as well as prompt to make it happen. But this basically shows the model's native understanding as well as reasoning of consuming multiple images and then get the native graphs generated in HTML, which is pretty cool. And this model is not yet available in production, but we are targeting to ship it to developers as soon as we can. Cool. That's all the demos I have today. I would suggest stay tuned with the news. I think this model is going to coming out soon.
I can't believe we got to see a little sneak peek. Thank you so much for pulling together those demos, Janan. Thank you, Sophie, for also joining us. I know you both have to leave, busy people, on to the next, but we really appreciate you joining us. And we'll try to obviously follow up with any questions that we get in the chat in case there's something we can't
Thanks
answer.
for having us.
Of course. We really appreciate it. We'll see you later.
Thanks for having us. Bye, folks.
Wonderful. So just to round up, if you are looking to use any of our MAI Code 1 Flash models, you can use this URL just here, QR code, or the URL is at the bottom as well, in order to take a little look at the Code Flash model from some of those demos that Janan shared with us as well. Okay. Oh, strange seeing yourself on the screen. I look a bit more tanned in that picture. But now I know a few people were asking in the chat a little bit more about images as well. So it was really nice to see. Oh, it's great to see John is already using some of the code stuff. And actually, John, I think it was you that asked, like, could you add an image? So it looks like that's coming in the code side. But now, just from a developer to developer perspective, I am quite new to image models. I've probably spent more time with using coding models, so like agents, building agents, things like embedding models for when you're building like RAG-based agents and stuff like that. And obviously in general, kind of frontier as well as small models. But one of the things that I haven't had a chance to really dig into properly was sort of image and speech. And this model family has lots available in that space that they released at Microsoft Build in June. And so what I wanted to do was just very briefly walk you through just that image set of a couple of examples of where I've used image 2.5 Flash, image 2.5 for some of its strengths, as well as Pro for some of its strengths as well. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to switch to my other screen. Let me do, before I do that, just double check we're all, yep, we're all good on this. And there we go. So hopefully you can now see a Visual Studio Code screen and also a developer notebook. Don't worry too much if it's a little bit small, because actually one of the outcomes, I'll explain a lot of it, and then it's actually the pictures that you want to see in this case. But I've created this developer demo. We're actually going to be sharing this on a GitHub repository very soon. I, did the classic in a notebook, kind of installed the dependencies. I've got all of my configured credentials. So these are actually models that I deployed into our Microsoft Foundry tenant that we have access to as a team. And I was able to deploy all 3 of them so that I could try them out. I'm working with images, so, lots of helper functions to make sure that they visualize quite nicely. So that's kind of the boring bit. Let's get to the interesting bit. So MAI image 2.5 Flash. What were a couple of scenarios that I found very useful was, more recently, I've been sorting out my wardrobe. And one of the things I found on some of these reseller sites is that the people who do this quite a lot have all of their clothing on these like beautiful backgrounds, or they've like shot all of their stuff at a studio or something like that. And this was what I had. I just had a blue dress that I'd kind of worn once or something like that, and I just kind of hung it on my wardrobe. That was as good as I could do at the point in time to kind of get into this space. But what I was thinking was, actually, our Flash models are amazing for producing lots of images quickly, for cheaper, for Flash, and actually giving me some options to kind of look at. And I was really impressed that in 1.3 seconds, I was using concurrent calls. So I was able to create sort of 4 out of 6 images very, very quickly, sort of thing. Each one taking around 31, 32 seconds. But one of the key things here I was so impressed with was the actual dress, even the silly little like tag bits that, help you hang it on a hanger. The consistency was so impressive, but the beautiful backgrounds, the shadows that it's put on it, this Parisian apartment one is a lovely one. Just the minimal studio one, just a simple lighting effect that was kind of added to it. I was really, really impressed by what it was able to give me so quickly and really like open up my mind, I guess, to what was possible. So there we go. If you need to change the background on different items, the Flash model, impressive quality, incredible speed, but also very, very good cost as well. I have a few more demos in here, but I know we're short on time. So let's move on to the MAI image 2.5 model. This is kind of middle range as far as I understand. Obviously, this model can produce, some stunning images, but one of the things I really wanted to focus on showing was a little bit more of the image editing capabilities. And I wanted you to show it you in a really realistic situation. So in this case, I was at the car wash on the weekend, and I'd been there for quite a while. I was kind of like in a queue, and I was literally just sending like classic, just quick WhatsApp image, nearly done or whatever to my other half, and saying like, oh, I'll be back in like 10 minutes. But I got the classic sort of like your thumb or your finger. I was probably holding too much at the time, kind of in the photo. And I thought, you know what? This is the kind of thing, like, you've got a group photo and someone's leg is in it because they're walking past, or you've got a nice photo but someone's kind of staring at your camera in the background. All of these types of edits using this model, I thought it did quite a good job. So here's the outcome. That means to zoom out a little bit here. Of removing all of obviously the fingerprints, putting in an impressive realistically, what would be under there. But I think what I wanted to show you here was more the before and after, because what the most impressive thing for me was the consistency of what was left. Like, it wasn't like the whole image changed. I sometimes find that sometimes it like AIifies too much, like it makes it too perfect or too outrageous or something like that. But if you look, like the actual scene is pretty, does it look a little bit shinier? I think it might do, to be fair. But otherwise, very, very good consistency of the original photo, and really focusing on the ask, which was what did I want to get rid of. So yeah, very, very impressed with the image editing, which was nice. I also tried this with a few other things. So I got a really nice bunch of flowers. This is my kitchen. And the irony was I asked it to like focus on brightening up the flowers, make the flowers look amazing, sort of thing. But it also tidied my kitchen at exactly the same time. And I thought, oh, there could be uses for this. Like, I no longer need to tidy up. I can just remove the clutter from my house in these images. And another one was I was also traveling, kind of wanted that classic sort of social media, quick photo to be able to put on. And what I really liked about this was the removal of glare. It just made this all a little bit more realistic for me. It removed the chairs and some of the clutter. It kind of, sepia toned a little bit the image. I really liked the outcome here. It maybe was a bit overzealous over here because it's actually like another building on the other side, but otherwise it is a very, very lovely picture, which is great. Okay, finally, just keep an eye on time. On to Image 2.5 Pro. This model can create stunning images. I mean, the light, again, I think is what impressed me most personally when I was kind of looking into what it could do. And I thought this was a lovely illustration and a great sample that they were able to provide. However, I did also hear a little bit about character consistency. So you can actually give it a character or a brand or something like that and have it consistently reproduce it across a whole range of shots. And so that was what I wanted to try. So let's bring in our character. This is Bit. He was our old Microsoft Developer Relations mascot, or when we were in Azure a while back, and he's a plushie toy that sits on my shelf still. And I thought, you know what? Let's see how you do with trying to keep the character consistency of this plushy sort of comical character, little raccoon, which is very cute. So first things first, I wanted to see what it could do. This is a developer relations mascot. So I asked it to put it into some scenarios that I might find myself in myself as someone in developer relations. So here's Bit on stage, nice. Here's Bit at a conference booth. Do find ourselves doing that a lot. Here's Bit at a hackathon. Love this. Character consistency, lighting again. I was impressed, but I couldn't like compare. I couldn't figure out like what is it great at, where does it really shine and stuff like that. And so I got a little bit data sciencey on this, and I decided I was going to evaluate like a grid of different asks and different evaluations. And so if you see down here, I actually got it to look at different consistency cases. So as simple as just repeatability, different camera angles, different lighting, different scale. Was it close up? Was it behind something? Can you add other wardrobe items to it? Can it interact with objects? And then finally, like different poses. So I sent quite a lot. This obviously did cost, so each one was going to a pro model here. So you could say, would I start with the flash model? Possibly, but I did also want to know kind of how powerful it was. And so if I go down here, it ran through, oh, sorry, it skipped back up to the top there. Let's go all the way down here. Quite a long notebook after the time that I was getting really into these image models. Here we are. So this is my like reference image. This was the one that I just took on my iPhone and then gave to the model each time. Repeatability does a really nice job. It looks very, very realistic in every single one of them. Camera angle, sort of up and front. Side, he's a little bit taller. It's kind of emphasized his feet and legs maybe, but this kind of 3/4 pose is very good. The lighting again, I was really impressed with, you know, conference stage lighting, a warm, low lighting. You've got close up, behind a desk, in a crowd. Some of my favorite ones. I thought it did a fantastic job. This is a plushy character to put a little conference lanyard. The coat was a really, really nice fix, as well as the backpack, you know, given the facing of this. I was really impressed with the additions of wardrobe items here. Wide angle, normal and portrait. We've got some great stuff here. Once we got into sort of holding different objects, the arms one was a tough one because it has, you know, it's got really, really tiny arms. So doing any kind of interaction on a laptop is pretty tough there. So, you know, fair play, it's decent. Holding a coffee cup, and then finally kind of doing different poses. So standing, neutral, walking, etc. So just wanted to show a little bit more the character consistency here. I am pretty impressed with, you know, across all sorts of different shots that I asked it to do, but also kind of taking a little look at what's possible with these different image models. So wonderful. I took our image models for a little bit of a spin. I've tried to explain a little bit to you some of the stuff I looked for. I'd love to hear from you if you try these image models, what you find as well. You know, it's kind of part of trying all these different things. So do keep in touch, add me on LinkedIn, follow me online, or engage in the chat as well, which is great. Okay, so I think we have Sharmila in the house. Sharmila, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Amy.
Hi, good to see you. Good to see you. Hopefully you caught the end there. Sorry, I know I'm a couple of minutes over, but welcome for our weekly highlights section. You do this the best, the news anchor of Model Mondays. So yeah, take it away. You just shout next slide and I'm all over it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, we've been on a hiatus for a while, but then the model news train did not stop. We've been launching a lot of models. So what I'm going to do in the next few weeks is try to play catch up to just let people know what are the new models that I've launched, as well as bring in the latest from that particular week as well. So kind of a good mix of both. So let's get started. The first one is I wanted to kind of quickly talk about this customer case study that we did with AT&T and AMD. The reason why this is important is because tokenomics as well as capacity has become the words of the day. I mean, having the latest and greatest models are great, but then if your customer is not able to use the model because of capacity issues, then it becomes a moot point to have the model. So what we did at Build last year was we launched this thing called the Managed Compute offering, which gives you a streamlined way to access like dedicated GPUs. And one of our customers, AT&T, they started using my Foundry Managed Compute, and they built OTel 2.0, and which enabled them to process around trillion tokens across open models like 5, 4, GPT OSS 120B, Gemma 4 on both AMD and NVIDIA GPUs. and they were able to optimize for their infrastructure and cost, and also for model choice, saving tens of millions while accelerating their development. And you can see some of the metrics that I've shown in the screenshot. Um, those are really astounding numbers, to be honest. And so, if anyone is thinking of using some of these open source models and you're like worried about capacity, try our Foundry managed compute. I think you will see some great benefits of using that kind of deployment offering. Moving on, Amy, next slide, please. Let's see. Okay, yeah. The next is, of course, our typical model news. GPT, we just launched recently the GPT Transcribe and GPT Live Transcribe in Microsoft Foundry. And so, like, this is again something like where the speech AI is getting a big upgrade in Foundry. We already have our speech products, but then with all these new GPT models will also be available through our speech products. And this GPT transcribe models delivers high quality speech recognition for recorded and live audio. So it makes it easier for you to build real time meeting assistants, contact center solutions, voice agents, and transcription workflows with lower latency and enterprise ready APIs. So we have the QR code and a link to the blog in all of these slides. If you're interested in learning more, go ahead and look into that. Next slide, Amy. Okay. Then now the next is Kimi K3. Of course, this has been the um, like recently buzzed model in the industry, and it is now available through Fireworks AI on Foundry, and it has a 1 million token context window, and it's designed for applications that need to reason across massive code bases and lengthy documents and multi-hour transcripts, expanding the range of how open models are now available for like production grade production grade AI work. Moving on to the next. Of course, no, next slide, Amy. Thank you. Of course, no news is complete without some announcement around Anthropic or OpenAI. So we recently launched the Claude Opus 5 in Foundry, and it again, Claude models are known for pushing the frontier for coding, long-running agents, and complex enterprise reasoning, which is again giving developers another top-tier option for building production AI applications with Azure native governance and security. So one thing I want to call out, until the recent past or until build, all these Claude models were available only through Anthropic. Like it was hosted on Anthropic, but then at build that changed. We are now hosting natively on Azure all these latest models. So you can, use all these models without worrying about, your data leaving the Azure environment. Now, the last one, moving on to the last slide. So this is not necessarily a specific model news update. We just wanted to call out that our Microsoft AI Labs is our new destination for exploring all of the latest AI innovations before they become mainstream. So you can discover a lot of the experimental models, interactive demos, and early research projects that gives developers a first look into the future of AI experiences. So we have these 5 updates which happened in the last few months, which is around 5.4 reasoning vision, Aurora, and all the other updates, which is headed towards like large scale AI systems, richer multimodal experience, and frontier and open model choices. Again, also focusing on production ready infrastructure and faster experimentation. So the more if you try out these models and you like it or you use it a lot, the more chances of these models becoming moving from the experimental to the production phase of our model life cycle. So that brings us to an end of the highlights. Of course, this doesn't capture all the news that dropped. So we will, as I said, we will play catch up in the next few weeks, and we'll bring to you all the latest and greatest that's happening on Foundry with models.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Shami. That was brilliant. So just like you said, there's so much news in this space. But yeah, tune in again next week. You'll hear about more of the different news over the short break that we've had across the summer as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Shami. And yeah, we'll move to wrap up our session. So we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Incredible. So we always talk about what's coming next week. So thank you so much if you're still here and tuning in. I hope you found it a really, really good session. We focused on Microsoft AI models. We heard about the high-level ethos, the specifics to the coding model. We even saw a little demo of what's to come, which was amazing. We did a little developer deep dive from myself into the way I've been using some of the image models. And then finally, Shami took us away with some of the headlines of things that you may not have known. And so 5 minutes of your time, hopefully you've learned 5 different things. So for next week, we'll be focusing on Cohere models. So Cohere for Agentic AI. Bethany will be our wonderful host on August 17th. So definitely tune in again then. And she will be joined by Andy Tran, who's a principal solution architect for Cohere, here on Model Mondays, where, as always, they'll be sharing lots of great news, hopefully lots of great demos as well. And so with that, let me just double check that we're not... Thank you, everyone, for joining us in the comments as well. It's been great to see how you're using the different products and some of your questions. Make sure to follow us along in our Foundry Discord, where you can carry on having that conversation with myself, Nitya, Lee, Bethany, the MAI team, etc. We're able to get those different things in there. So yeah, with that, thank you so much for tuning in to the first episode of Season 4 of Model Mondays, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find our survey link on the screen or in the chat, and we'll see you at the next one.